Okay, I think we've got it going now. So let me tell you that I'm Honest Jim, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning here in Buriram. We just had a typhoon go through here, and it rained like it was like a waterfall. It wasn't like rain. I've never seen it like this before. The house next to is completely flooded. We live out here on a street, which has a slight incline, so the water runs down into the village lake. But anyway, as my explanation on my thumbnail says, this is going to be my history of 1973, first time I came to Thailand. So here we go. I first came to Thailand in 1973, and I had just finished law school, and my friend Bill had invited me to come and visit him in Bangkok. Bill and I became really good friends as freshman basketball players at Fullerton University. Because of scholarship issues, Bill went to USC after that, and I ended up playing the rest of my career up at St. Mary's College after a sophomore year at JC. At any rate, I was really good friends with Bill over the years. We didn't see each other a lot, but I did go to his wedding. And when he got out of USC, he went over to Thailand right away. No explanation. He took his wife and he had two young kids, went to Thailand. Um, Invited me to come over. I'd never been to Thailand. I didn't know much about Thailand. And so I said, well, why not? You know, it could be an adventure. I went around the world twice. I liked it so much the first time. I went a second time on Pan Am's old $1,500 fare. But that's other stories. So I went to Thailand. I took my old high school buddy Howard with me, and we got to the airport. It was the old airport at the time, and they were building a brand new one, which is now finished, Suvarnabhumi. Um, the airport's quite a story too. But anyway, Bill took us to his three-story condominium. He had a three-bedroom apartment. He had a big place. It was a walk-up. There was no elevators. I'll explain why I'm saying that right now later. The first thing I noticed was there was a guard. It was the guardhouse at the gate, the entry gate, and he had a submachine gun, and he was in a military uniform. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, and nobody mentioned it, so I didn't talk about it. And we walked up the stairway to Bill's second floor apartment and went inside, and it was really late. We met his children. He had two little boys. I met Debbie, his wife. He met her in USC and married her. And I guess he'd been in Thailand maybe 2 years by now. He has started a freight forwarding company, or inherited one, which I'll talk about in a minute. We went into the apartment, and Bill and I, as I said, were really exhausted from so long flight. The tickets in those days were only about $400 round trip. So we got to the apartment, and we went to we had our own room, and we had separate beds, and Bill and I crashed out and went to sleep. We woke up in the morning, and Debbie said, "Come out for breakfast." Bill already went to work. Now this was my first really wonderful impression of Thailand. We went in the dining area, which was off of his living room, and here was a table, a dining table, completely set out. It had orange juice, water, coffee. There was a plate with knives and forks, everything in a place setting. There was the Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, and the Bangkok Post, all layered out nicely next to the setting. And the maid, or the cook came in. They had a cook. She came in and asked us what we'd like for breakfast. Well, I want some pancakes, sausage, and some eggs, this and that. I was hungry. And so Howard ordered what he wanted, and she made everything to order for us. Let me get this. Is the lighting a little bit shadowy there? Is that better? Okay. So we ate that, and I looked at my news media and talked to Debbie a little bit. She already was ready to get the kids to school, so it was me and Howard mainly having breakfast. As I said, this was my first real deal with Thailand. I said, gee, I'd like to have a cook and a maid and then a house like this and everything set. This is way, what I'm used to in California. So we got together with Bill later after work, and he told us this story. He said, well, we're on a second landing here, And the reason there's a guard out there with a machine gun is there's a general whose mistress lives on the top story. And I thought, oh, well, okay, that makes sense. And it was, taking care of the general when he's, visiting. And then Bill told me one story. He said one night they were in bed asleep and there was a screaming and yelling and outrageous uh, commotion. And Bill opened the door to his apartment, and here's the woman running down the stairs with the general's severed penis. Blood all over the place, and the general in hot pursuit. She runs down the stairs, she's yelling and screaming, and he's yelling and screaming, and she throws the severed penis into the swimming pool. Meanwhile, the general's in great distress, and he said, well, they got it, and Thailand is the #1 country in the world for reattaching severed penises. So he got it fixed up and went back to life. I never knew what the hubbub was about, but you can imagine. In fact, there's going to be a lot of things I'm going to talk about in my stories about Thailand, but you're going to have to use your imagination because this is a YouTube and a family YouTube, and I can't express in detail all of the things that went on in the country. But overall, Thailand's a great place. This was just the only time I'd seen this. I'd heard stories before about this kind of thing happening, but I'd never, had a close friend who had witnessed it. So anyway, Bill had come over to Thailand immediately after graduating from USC with Debbie and his 2 boys, and he was going to run a freight forwarding company. Now, this was the tail end. When Bill got there, it was the tail end of the Vietnam War. And you have to understand the circumstance in Thailand. All of the soldiers went through for R&R. There was a bunch of, I call them clubs set up. I don't know if people are going to work. And the clubs set up with their the bar, and music and stuff. No hoity-toity, but just places for the soldiers to R&R. So there was a lot of buildings and warehouses and offices and things. And when the military left, the U.S. military left, they just gave these things to Thai people and Thai businesses. One of the big ones that you may have heard of and will hear of if you ever come over here is Villamart, which is kind of a high-end grocery store. It's not a real big grocery store, but they got a lot of good, wines and specialties and special meats and special things. They started with being gifted a few assets from the United States government, and they created Villamart. So Bill, and I'm not too detailed on this because I never asked him, somehow became involved with Flying Tiger, which I believe was the CIA conduit for moving all of the troops and the munitions and things back and forth to Southeast Asia during the war. I don't know to what extent that was true or what he did, but he got in there and he started working for Flying Tiger, and when they left, he got the freight forwarding business. And apparently, from what I understand, he owned the whole thing. Now, here is about 1971, 1970, Bill comes to Thailand with his family, and he doesn't speak any Thai, and he takes the bull by the horns, and he says, okay, I'll do this. Nobody will ever outwork Bill. The guy's a working machine, and I really respect him for that, but we were supposed to go to Pattaya on this trip and see the beach. And it was getting difficult to go because Bill was working so hard and Debbie couldn't get him out of the warehouse. He had IBM and Xerox and some of these big corporations, and they were moving things back and forth. And it got to be, off of the military grade, it got to be more of the domestic stuff because Thailand started exploding with growth after the war. It would never be the same. One day, Debbie took me to the Oriental Hotel in downtown Bangkok, which is the old, white, clapboard, classy hotel in Bangkok. And we sat out front and had lunch. And I just felt like I was like back in the 1850s. It was wonderful. And it was such a unique experience for me. I'd never seen anything like this. They had the waiters come out, and everybody was genteel, and we were treated really well. And they had, as I recall, they had cages out front with monkeys and parrots and stuff stacked up, and there was a lot of animal life and animal noises. So I felt like I was, had a lot of companionship there. And I remember when we went to the hotel and when we went back home, we took the Klong, which I recall is the waterway. At this point in time, Thailand was covered with these waterways, and everybody traveled by boat with a smaller boat with a guy like a taxi boat, and he had a pole, and he would move the boat along, stroking the pole into the bottom of the Klong. And this was so nice, you know, and the cars and the highways and the roadways and the traffic that you see in Thailand now just didn't exist. And it was such a genteel, wonderful, relaxed world. And so we go home, and we were going to go to Pattaya. Oh, I remember Bill had an elephant skinned sofa made of elephant skin. And I don't think you can get that now, and I don't think you really could get it in America even then, but I'm not sure. But this hide, it's unbelievably strong and durable. I mean, it's like, you know, having a soft cement layer on your sofa. I mean, you could never rip it, you could never tear it, and it was quite functional. And one time, Bill and I were going to go somewhere in Bangkok, and we were going to take a taxi. And I just, you know, where I come from, you get in a taxi, he flips the flag up and the fare starts running, and you pay the fare at the end of the trip. Here, everything was negotiable. Today, it's not like that. But sometimes they won't run the fare. You have to watch. They won't run the fare machine. You got to be careful and tell them that you want to see the fare running. Otherwise, they'll just give you a figure at the end. So Bill and I go up to the taxi, stopped off the highway, and Bill starts speaking Thai. And the taxi driver says, blah, 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 it's this much. There's no fare box at this point in life. They have a negotiable thing, which is a pain in the ass every time you want to take a taxi. So Bill's going, pang, pang. That's the first Thai word I ever learned. Pang is too expensive. Too expensive. Too many baht. And they go back and forth, and Bill would literally shout, pang, pang. And finally they came to an agreement, and we got in the taxi. And I just went like, wow, this is, you know. To Bill, it was just another day at the shop. But that's the way it was with taxis back in 1973. So we were going to go to Pattaya, which is a beach about an hour and a half drive south. And most of you may have heard of it. Many of you have probably been there. But in 1973, it was just a beach there. So we're going to get Bill, and we're going to go on the weekend, and he's working, he's in the shop, he's working in the warehouse, it's Sunday, and Debbie says, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go get Bill. Let's all go to the warehouse. I've got the bags packed, and the car and the driver, they have a driver too, you know, besides the maid or the cook. So, and we're going to leave from the warehouse and take Bill, and we're going right down to Pattaya for the weekend. Okay, she was resolute about it. So we get to the warehouse. It's a big warehouse. There's a lot of those wooden crates, and we're calling Bill out. There's nobody there. Bill, Bill, and his head pops up out of one of the crates. He's packing a crate for IBM, and Debbie goes and literally grabs him by the shirt and pulls him out and says, "We're going to Pattaya." Jim and Howard came all the way from the United States, and this is what we were going to do. And so we got in the car and we drove down to Pattaya. Now, Pattaya in 1973 is nothing like Pattaya today. We got there, we went to the beach. I remember we got a little hotel. There were no discos, there were no go-go's. There was none of that. There were no big hotels. It was like, you know, out of the 1930s or something, small buildings and such. But the beach was awesome. It was a giant, curved, half-moon beach full of sand. Today, they're trying to keep the sand on the beach and shoveling up sand out of the ocean. There was plenty of sand then. And we went down to the beach, and there was nobody. I mean nobody, and nothing on this beach. I may as well have been on the moon. And so I got down and sat down to the beach. Bill and Debbie went to do something with the hotel, and Howard wandered off somewhere. And I'm sitting there by myself, looking at this long expanse of sand. And here comes the Thai guy. One Thai guy comes out of nowhere, and he comes over and he sits next to me. He doesn't speak any English, but he opens up this cloth. He opens it up, and in it is a beautiful red ruby. Thailand has rubies and sapphires. You may know or not know, but they do have them. And he had this beautiful red ruby, and he wanted to sell it to me. And back in the day, I should have probably bought it, but I didn't know anything about rubies. I didn't know how much they were. I had no idea. So I just declined. One of the first big mistakes I ever made in my life financially. I let that ruby get away. So anyway, Bill and Debbie left Howard and I out for it was Saturday night, and they went off to dinner and themselves. And the driver took us around Pattaya, and Bill said, the driver, whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go. So Howard was interested in maybe meeting some Thai girls, right? He was single, and so was I at the time. So there's no go-go's. There's nobody on the streets. There's no freelancers walking around. It's just like people in the town walking around. So he took us to this little house. I'll call it a farmhouse, a couple of blocks behind the beach, and there were some girls in there, and they were sitting around on the sofa. They weren't dancing, and they weren't dressed provocatively. They were just Pattaya girls. And Howard and I talked to them when the mama-san came over, and we didn't speak any Thai, and we chitted and chatted. And it just wasn't our cup of tea at the time, and we left. We went to 3 of those places, and I just thought, well, this is kind of disappointing. The girls didn't speak any English, and so we left and went home. And we went back on Sunday. We drove back up to Bill's house, and Sunday night, Bill took Howard and I out to dinner in Bangkok. He took us to a restaurant that I've been to Bangkok many times, and I've been to a lot of restaurants. But I've never been to a restaurant like Bill took me to in 1973. I don't know if they even exist anymore. It was a very fine restaurant. They had individual tables, and Bill and Howard and I sat in the chairs at our table, and there was a waiter. I kid you not. There was a waiter at each corner of the table. 4 corners, 4 waiters. We would put a pat of butter. I put a pat of butter on my roll. Boom, boom. A fresh pat of butter would be in the plate immediately from the waiter next to me. The service was over the top, and through grandmother's wood, the Goldilocks house, this was the most unbelievable service I'd ever seen. The meal was exquisite, it was wonderful, and then Bill said, how about dessert? And Howard and I said, well, yeah, okay, let's have some dessert. And he took us in the restaurant. This was part of the restaurant. It was one of those bubble houses with the big glass windows, and a bunch, like 20, 30 Thai girls sitting in there. And Howard and I had eaten and were tired, and we said thank you, but no thank you. And we went on our way. Also, I found out what the barbershops were about at this time. You could go to the barbershop and get a haircut. And upstairs at every barbershop, and I haven't seen any of this, I don't know, in the last 20 years. You could go upstairs and there'd be some girls up there, and you could, spend a little fun time up there, and I guess tell your girlfriend or your wife that you went to get a haircut. So it was all civilized, and that was the way it was back in 1973. I'll probably think of some other things on that week trip. We went to the elephant place. I rode the elephants. I remember when I'm riding the elephant, I heard a plop, plop. And I looked back, and it was the biggest dump I'd ever seen. The elephant had, he didn't even stop walking. He just minded his own business, but it was loud. It was loud. Anyway, I've got lots of other things to say, lots of other stories to tell you. This is only 1973 and my first trip. So I'm a newbie. I really could appreciate your subscription, the sharing, the black bell, ring the black bell, the likes. Please, my algorithms would love you for it. So anyway, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much, and thanks for listening. Bye.